And breaking now, after more than a year, since 8 members of the same family were murdered in Pike County, there is a man under arrest.
And that man is a family member, and he is now in the Ross County Jail, one county next to where the massacre took place. Investigative reporter Jody Barr, he's there live with the story. Jody?
Well, Rob and Tricia, James Manley will spend the night here in the Ross County Jail, where he'll face a judge in the morning on 2 felony counts connected to the investigation into these murders. Today's arrest confirms something we've known for months, that investigators have had an eye on James Manley and his sister since this April 2015 massacre. James Manley walked through the doors of the Ross County Jail today to surrender to 1 count of evidence tampering and 1 count of vandalism. Investigators say Manley destroyed a GPS tracker agents put on his truck last month. Manley's father, Lynn Manley, told me today his son found the tracker while working on the truck's exhaust last month. We interviewed Lynn Manley in September. Manley told us then his son and daughter, Bobby Joe, were being targeted by investigators from the start. James and Bobby Joe are Dana Rhoden's siblings. Dana was murdered with her 2 children at this home. Lynn Manley says James Manley discovered those bodies. Bobby Joe Manley found 3 other Rhoden victims in these 2 scenes. The day of the massacre, Manley says, agents took his son and daughter to the sheriff's office and interrogated them. Tell me about the question they asked of your daughter about her sister.
They just asked how much someone paid to them to kill our whole family.
And the investigators asked your daughter that question?
Yeah, asked my daughter and my son both.
What did they tell you about that question?
They haven't got no comment on that.
In the last few months, investigators have said they believe someone who knew the victims committed the murders. Someone who knew them personally. Someone their dogs recognized. And someone who knew the area. When we interviewed Lynn Manley last fall, he agreed.
So, I mean, no one knew her schedule. Yeah. So it had to be someone that knowed or even watched one of the 2. Mm-hmm. It had to be someone knowed where all 4 of them lived.
But Lynn Manley was adamant that someone was neither his son or daughter.
You know, they can say whatever they want to say, but my boy and Dana was sisters and brother. But they was more than sister and brother. I mean, they was friends and everything else. I can stake my life at my son or my daughter didn't kill the family. I don't know about the rest of them, but I'm going to tell you.
Well, again, James Manley's charges today have nothing to do with accusations involved directly with the murders, only with destroying that GPS tracker that state agents put on his pickup truck. But Lynn Manley told me today his son James and Bobby Joe have taken polygraphs in connection to this massacre investigation. We'll be back at 10:30 with that angle and new revelations about who was texting one of the Rhoden victims within hours of these killings. Live from the Ross County Jail, Jody Barr, Fox 19 Now.
And we continue to follow breaking news in Ross County. An arrest has been made in connection with the case of the Rhoden family massacre in Pike County. Let's get back to investigative reporter Jody Barr live at the jail. Jody, just to reiterate, James Manley's charges tonight have nothing to do with the murders, correct?
Rob, that is 100% correct. These charges are evidence tampering and vandalism. State investigators charged Manley today with destroying a GPS tracker that BCI put on his pickup truck last month. I asked Lynn Manley, that's James Manley's father, today, how in the world did his son find a GPS tracker that agents had weeks before stuck under his truck? And Lynn Manley told me today that his son James was under that truck doing exhaust work back around April the 28th. When he looked up and he saw this GPS tracker, it was tied with 2 zip ties and magnets inside the frame rail, the rear of that truck where the spare tire would go. So Lynn Manley told me when James Manley saw that, he cut the tracker out. And in some colorful language, Mr. Manley told me that his son destroyed that GPS tracker. That's why he's in jail here tonight. But One other point. We told you about polygraphs in this case. I spent around an hour with Lynn Manley today. Again, that is James Manley. Dana Rhoden, that's her father, James Manley's father as well. They were brother and sister here. Spent about an hour with him today. He told me since this investigation, his son has taken a polygraph. Mr. Manley told me today that James Manley did in fact fail at least one polygraph. He said his son told him that, and he's had conversations with state investigators about that polygraph. Also, Bobby Jo Manley, that is Dana Rhoden and James Manley's sister. She was the first person who found those initial bodies that we heard in the 911 calls here in April of 2016. She found those bodies. She was the first on the scene. She told me today, she was at her dad's house and said that she had taken 3 polygraphs. Every one, Bobby Jo says, she passed.
That is Jody Barr reporting from Ross County. Jody, I understand that you've also learned about some text messages connected to this case.
Oh, yeah, and again, this is information I got from Lynn Manley, who's been obviously in contact with his son and daughter who have been interrogated by investigators with this case. Mr. Manley told me, though, this is not from charging documents, not from investigators, from Lynn Manley himself. He said that at 2 a.m. the night of the murders, that his son, James Manley, told him that he was texting with Jake Wagner. You remember the searches from last Friday and Saturday in Adams County. Well, that was in connection to, according to a search warrant that Mr. Manley has, that was in connection to Jake Wagner. He was also connected to one of the Rhoden victims. Well, Mr. Manley told me today that his son was texting that individual 2 a.m. the night of the murders. Also, I was told by Mr. Manley today that James's wife was texting Dana Rhoden. Dana Rhoden was murdered with her 2 children in one of those crime scenes. At 1 in the morning, Dana had gotten off, Mr. Manley said around 12:30, went home, and his daughter-in-law was texting Dana Rhoden that night of the murders. Now, when you take a step back, I asked Mr. Manley, that does appear, when investigators say they believe whoever did this knew these victims. Mr. Manley said that is absolutely not the case. He said he would stake his life on the fact that neither his son nor his daughter had anything to do with these murders, but obviously from what we told you at 10 o'clock, his son and daughter have been looked at by investigators since day one of this investigation. And also tonight, James Manley behind bars here in connection with this investigation.